Let's talk first do Minnesota businesses pay enough tax?
Do you want to just go right down the row and have everybody take a shot at it? Let's hear from Carrie.
Let's hear from Carrie. Let's talk about taxes. As you know, there's a $7 billion deficit that we're looking at, and we have to be very creative in how we're going to solve that. So do businesses pay enough taxes? I would say yes, they do pay enough taxes. We need to take a look. Would I cut taxes for corporations? No, I would not. But I wouldn't raise them either.
Good answer.
I think we need to look at the high end of income earners and that they pay their proportional share. And I also think we need to look at services that the government provides and how we can wisely cut with the least amount of pain.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe I'm a small business owner myself, and I've been in business for quite a few years, and I think we pay way too much taxes, and we need to find ways to cut small businesses. Large corporations, I think, can probably pay more, and that's pretty much my position on that.
I think, for anyone here who's interested in taxes in the state budget, Minnesota does a really good job of putting out every other year a tax incidence study. We're one of the only states that does it, and it's very comprehensive. And one of the things you can take away from that is fairly educated decisions about where we ought to take tax policy. And you've heard the governor, you've heard others talk about the corporate tax and how Minnesota is an outlier on the upper end on the corporate tax. And when you look at the tax incidence study, it's true. And one of the things that the tax incidence study also tells us is whether a tax is progressive, meaning it's paid based on who makes money, or regressive, sort of based on not attached to income. And the corporate tax ends up being a pretty regressive tax because businesses pass it along to their customers in the cost of the goods or services that they're doing. So I actually did support this on the tax committee, a reduction in the corporate tax rate. But we can get into personal income taxes at some other point because you have to offset it somewhere.
Okay.
This is a business audience. The fact of the matter is the state does face a $7 billion crisis. And anybody who thinks that business isn't going to end up helping contribute towards alleviating that is engaging in wishful thinking. That said, my experience as a school board member for a long time, watching how the state legislature has attempted to reconcile all parties, leads me to the conclusion that Minnesota has bent over backwards through the years to come up with the fairest possible scheme to put taxes on all segments of the population. I think the point that Roger made is very important to keep in mind. If you tax business, you're not really taxing well, it's the pass-through quality. If you tax business, business will find a way to make sure that it has a profit or it will go out of business. And it's customers of all the businesses that have to pay for it. One of the things that Jesse Ventura suggested that we do is tax services. I think under the circumstances, this is a very interesting time to consider how we're going to treat services because it's very much like a good, it's just a little less tangible.
Huh.
Can you give an example?
There are lots of services that escape the typical kinds of taxes. We tax sales, certainly. We have corporate taxes, but I think there are an awful lot of people who offer, they work with people one-on-one. Simply don't pay the same sorts of taxes that you find in the business community.
Sure.
I will say that this is an argument that I haven't thought about for about 4 or 5 years before today, so I'm not.
It's not fully formed.
So it's not fully formed, but it was an idea that made sense at the time, and
Yeah.
to the extent that we can elaborate on this, we've got a $7 billion deficit to solve, and if that's a way of doing it, I think we should consider it.
Just as a quick example, it would be like auto repair. You don't pay tax on the labor.
Thank you
Well-
for getting me out of this.
Okay.
And if I can just elaborate on, some of the big things that we've heard talked about over the last session or two are, and I see Bill here, architectural fees, legal fees, accounting fees, services, having taxes on those
We tax tanning now,
services
come on.
instead of.
Tanning.
Well, Minnesota doesn't yet.
Well,
The feds want to go down
yeah.
that road.
Dave, by way of example, tanning. just went into effect. I met with a gal yesterday who owns a commercial building in Superior. Half of it is now vacant because the tanning salon went out of business thanks to the 10%. So now there's no revenue source for which she can pay her real estate taxes, which was coming out of the rent. So that's one of those potential consequences that we need to think about when we say, well, let's just add another tax.
Good point.
Okay,